A friend of mine posted, "I love God, but some of his children get on my last nerves." That's
One
pretty
person
good.
said, "Don't listen to God. Don't listen to man. Listen to God." Well, what's the difference?
Yeah.
You know, man saying what God said. So, okay, we are on live, and this is the WWE. All the controversy. So we are just going to have a discussion, and something I did. I have a messenger little group that is our group, kind of the ones here in the United States that are affiliated with us. This group sitting here, plus my son and his family, and of course Sister Pam and several of us, and then the people from Indiana, Brother Rick Hall and all of his family, Stephen and Lily and all of them, and we're all on there together. And the ones out of Canada, Sister Diane Stanhope and Brother Wesley Dolphin, and so we're all on it together anyway. And I just wrote and said, you know, what do we feel would be good things to discuss on Friday evenings? And it kind of come to a consensus. The one overflowing thing was number one and number two is we've got youth in the physical, and we've got youth in the message. When I say youth, young people just coming into the message. You might be 80 years old, but you're new to the message. And the things that we've been talking on. So, you know, getting back into some of those prior subjects, because I have been getting a lot of emails from different places across the world saying, we really love this message. We know that you grew up under William Branham, and how did you get from this point over here of all those teachings to where you're at today? How in the world did you get to there? Because it is so much different. It's a furtherance. It's kind of like Luther. How did Wesley get to where he got? Well, he had to kind of pull on up from Luther's message. And so how did Pentecost get to where they got? They kind of had to pull on up from Wesley's message. And so then how did William Branham get to where he did? He had to pull out of Pentecost and step up. And today it is the same thing. We just have to pull out and step up, and there's not anything bad to say about any one of those. They are all our brothers and sisters, if you want to call them that. But so we'll be going back through some of those things just on discussion, and we had some great discussion today on the little forum that we have on Messenger. So there's something I had put out before I actually did that, and it was on the rapture, but we certainly don't have to talk about that right now. But it was Brother Ray Leffingwell had put out something that said, and I've read Margaret MacDonald's vision, but he said Margaret MacDonald's vision invented the rapture. Google it. If you Google it, you'll see her vision, you'll see the documents, and you'll see how the church kind of took her vision as a vision from the Lord, and thus saith the Lord, and the Pentecostal church, early Pentecostal church, began to preach the rapture in such a manner. In her vision, if you read it, of course, she's seen people flying away into the air and meeting Jesus, who was in his physical body, so to speak, the 33-year-old body that walked Galilee, and he's floating in the air, and we're all going up to him, or there's a large group going up to him. And so everybody just kind of enveloped that and said, that's what the rapture is going to be like. Of course, Brother Ray Leffingwell was saying, this is just not the way it's going to be. Somebody took a vision and just really went out to left field with it, and it became a well-known deception in the church. And so I wrote a comment on it, and I said, the interpretation of the rapture is one of the biggest falsehoods of religion. Now, having said that, if you want to talk about transformation, translation, opening the eyes of your understanding, changing in a moment, space of time, and about the kingdom coming without observation, then I'm ready to listen and enjoy. That's what the apostles of Jesus were talking about. So, how did we get from this rapture of all the bodies in the graveyard getting up and flying away in a rapture, and how did we get from that to saying, no, that's not what's going to happen? It's a transformation of the mind. It's a translation in spirit, in understanding. It's evolving into something that we realize that we're here. This is our earth. This is our home, and we're not leaving here. And those that have left here because of old age and whatever else they left because of, they didn't really leave. There's a veil between us and them, and they are still right here in the earth, and that veil will be removed, and we'll all still be living right here in the earth. So kind of just as a little first thought to get us rolling a little bit, how did we...
You remember, I don't remember what you said, but you had talked about that, when Christ died, the veil was rent, and the dead in Christ got up out of the city supposedly, and people saw them walking around in the city, but yet their sepulchres are still there. But you had talked about that one time, and my memory tells me that was the beginning of us pulling out of the thought of a actual physical rapture, that we're getting out of graves. When you had talked about that event of what actually happened when Christ died.
Yeah.
You remember what it was that you spoke? I mean, it's been years ago.
I do. And how we
Because to me, that was the beginning of us coming out of that thought.
yeah. I guess I would say this. I had seen a lot of these things for years. I read the Bible a lot. I read the whole Bible almost every year between January and March as a young man. And now I read the New Testament almost monthly. I just read through it, and I can speed read. I was taught that in a corporation, so I can shoot through the New Testament within a couple of days, easy. And I can read the Book of Revelations in a couple hours. So I've done that a lot, and I realized something that meant I was just kind of thought, where did this rapture come from? Because nowhere in the entire book, the Old Testament, New Testament, Revelation, nowhere in the entire book does it talk about rapture. And I thought, this has to be a made-up thing. And but we didn't have internet back then. We didn't have all those things. So, it's kind of like, where did it come from? Well, the Pentecostal church always taught it. And I just, in my mind, I never could tally up to flying out of my shoes and going through the air. I just couldn't do it. So I was always teaching transformation and those kinds of things, but because the fundamental belief across all of the message was we're flying away, I knew if I was going to have any word to say at all without being totally kicked out, I was going to have to do one of two things, and that's kind of improvise my words, zip it up, or get out. So I was as a young man, I was bound by tradition and the chains, and we finally come to an age where I got to where I wasn't afraid to speak about it, and leave that whole concept of a rapture where we're flying away. And I'm gonna pull this up real quick before we. So that was my way of coming out of it and realizing that Paul talked about a change, and when I realized that Paul was talking about a change in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, well, I already had read enough that I knew the last trump would be the last church age messenger. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to believe that William Branham was the last church age messenger, if I am going to believe that, then there must be a change going on right now. And it's happening. And so then I read in the Seals book where he said, the last messenger preaches his message and raptures the church. And during the time of his message. So I knew it was going on. But, there wasn't nobody flying anywhere. So I began to realize that this was a process. Mm-hmm. And the rapture had been going on. And I found in the masterpiece, the rapture had been going on since the day of Pentecost. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a quote flying away. It was a process that we were to go through coming out of Pentecost into the blade, into the stalk, into the tassel, into the shuck, out into the wheat. And it was a long process. And the whole thing was, quote, a raising us higher in our consciousness and in that level. And it wasn't just when he said you be changed in a moment, I thought, well, exactly what did Paul mean? Because I knew Paul didn't have one of these watching on him. There was no such thing then. So what did he mean when he said change in a moment? Well, so I looked the word moment up, and it means a space of time. And so what Paul was saying is that there's a space of time where you yourself catch and understand, and you're raptured or you're caught up. And it wasn't a matter of everybody flying away. It's a matter of Daniel sitting at home catches something, and Don sitting at the restaurant catches something, and Alan sitting at work catches something, and we're all being raptured or being caught up into a higher evolution every day. And Aubrey comes around, and Connie comes around, and that evening or that day or that weekend, we talk about it, and we all kind of flow into it, and we say, yeah, that's right, I like that. So that's more what the rapture's about. And we will continue in this space of time. And it says in the twinkling of an eye. And of course we know what makes the eye twinkle. Light. So light striking the eye. And the eye is your understanding, the pineal gland, the eye. So light striking that third eye, or understanding coming to you, is that flow of the Spirit that wakes you up and makes you recognize a little deeper, a little more understanding about yourself and all of your surroundings and what we're all here for and what our purpose is. So we're changed in a space of time, and the way we are changed is the light is striking this third eye, and it's the twinkling. It didn't say the twinkling of the eyes, like it's the body's eyes. It's the eye, twinkling of the eye, changed in a moment in the twinkling of an eye. One eye, the pineal gland, that third eye, and as it catches its understanding, we're changed. We're raised up. We come to a higher understanding. And I've seen that play itself out in Thessalonians 4. All you have to do is read it once you get this understanding, and you can see how that the dead in Christ rise first, or those who are walking around dead catch the understanding, and we shall not hinder those that are asleep. And so all of us, slow but sure, one side of the veil and the other, we continually catch the understanding until we're caught up together, or the veil drops and we're all together. We didn't go anywhere.
Right.
We didn't get caught up to Mars or Jupiter or out somewhere past the moon, or we were all caught up, each one of us, one side of the veil and the other, until we all come together and all the veils drop. So that thinking kind of got us away from this whole concept of the rapture the way it was. Opening the eyes of our understanding, changing in the moment, space of time, the kingdom coming without observation. The kingdom being the next place we're going to talk about here. And I liked what Clement Ilunga wrote, and I wanted to read it. He said, talking about this whole rapture, change, transformation, he says, true, it's just a change of glories. You remember Paul talked about we're changed from glory to glory. A coming up hither, not in a sense of flying up, but raising in our understanding. From a bare grain coming up to the glory of a blade, and to the glory of a stalk, and the glory of a tassel, on into the glory of a shuck, and then coming up to the glory of a magnified, not original grain. And that's true. We're not going back to Pentecost. We're beyond Pentecost. We're not going back to original grain. It's magnified. It's come through a process. It finally ends up in the great farm or the ranch or the Eden that we wanted to be at, where we all come together. We're all caught up together in the air. Not speaking of air, all you have to do is look it up. That word means spirit, caught up in the spirit. When I looked all those things up, I knew the rapture just wasn't what we thought it was.
You know, a lot of that got based on, at least for me, when I grew up in the denominational church, everybody always pointed back to the ascension of Jesus as an example of what's going to happen to us. You know, and they use the scripturing that, hey, you know, there he goes up in the clouds, and what are you looking at? When he comes back, he's coming back the same way. Oh, in other words, he's coming back to get us, and we're all going to leave the same way he left. And that was the general teaching.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, it's based on scripture. It's got to be true.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misunderstanding that's based on scripture.
And if you read that, which I've always been a real just detail when it comes to reading. One word means everything to me. It says that he was caught up in clouds of glory, not rain clouds.
Right?
And Paul said that we're gathered with a great cloud of witnesses. So Jesus, that body, changed into a cloud of glory and was caught away with the saints that were on the other side. Or he passed through the veil. They didn't fly off in the sky blue yonder.
Right.
He passed through the veil. So it's just a matter of laying down a lot of tradition. So that's how we got where we're at. If you go into the website, I haven't been there since it's been set back up, but used to be there were writings where I took a lot of William Branham's quotes and a lot of scriptures, and I laid those out on the rapture, on the resurrection, just to kind of help people break through that cloudy veil of how in the world did we get here. William Branham makes a statement that we're all here together. He just makes so many statements that he puts it all right here. And so then another thing that we all talked about on this little discussion is the spiral movement from linear to simultaneous happenings within us. How do we move that whole resurrection cycle from linear to spiral? What I mean is, we took it away from being a straight line, like we resurrect, we change our body, we go into rapture, we eat at the wedding supper, we come back for 1,000-year reign, we go to the white throne judgment, and we go out into a new heaven and new earth. And we always had it set up on that linear. And how do we move from that into a spiral where it's not staying in one place, but it's moving like this? And all of it is happening simultaneous. How do we move? How do we get to that point? A lot of people still have a linear thought and a linear idea, especially the new ones that are coming in under some of these thoughts that we have. And I don't want to sit here and start a bunch of doctrines.
Right.
None of us do.
Right.
None of us do. But we can help you get an understanding and lay out a little framework for you to put some flesh on it. Think about it. And so how do we move? How did we do that? How did we get out of that whole linear thought?
I think the first thing, I can only go by personal, can't speak for everyone else. For example, when I first spoke with you back in 2012, I was in San Antonio. Remember I called you and had that half hour or so phone call with you?
Yeah.
I asked you 2 or 3 questions about the rapture, about the millennium, things like that. The answers you gave me, you might as well have been speaking in a foreign language. I did not understand anything that came out of your mouth. It was so far beyond anything I'd ever heard, anything I'd ever seen in writing, that when I hung up, I had a decision to make. I thought, either I have, because I don't have an established basis to say, yeah, I can reference this, I either have to say he doesn't know what he's talking about, and I have to let it go and stick with traditional thinking, or I had to say, the only way I'm going to see this is accept it, and by accepting it, my eyes become open to it. And that's the choice I made. I thought, I don't understand it, but I'm just going to say, you know what? Because something inside me said, I'm not 100% sure if it's true, but it excites me when I hear it.
Feels
It
good.
stimulates me in such a way that I want to hear more. It's a real good stimulation. In other words, there was an energy attraction there. And so I made the decision. I just said, you know what? I'm just going to accept what he says, and I'll figure it out. And in time, the more I went back in my mind and thought about the things you said, the more they just opened up. I mean, it was like, it was there. I was looking through a window, and suddenly I wasn't looking through a window more. I was standing outside, and it was all around me. And I realized that was it. The only way I'm ever going to move forward is quit staying put.
Yes.
I have to take everything that's in me today and empty it out, and tomorrow I'm empty, therefore I can be filled with the new thing of tomorrow. And that's when I started doing that every day, going back through things and saying, I don't need this. It was good for today, but it's not good for tomorrow. I put it down. I emptied space inside myself, and the next day I was ready for something new. So what I'm saying is it all came down to accepting, just being able to accept the fact that nothing is absolute. Everything's going to change. So the thing to do is to listen to it carefully and then see how it feels. And if it didn't feel right in me, I just set it aside. If it felt right, even if I didn't understand it, I held on to it. And I have learned to gain so much more understanding by doing that first, by accepting. So I think of a key factor for everybody is you have to be willing to tell yourself you don't know everything. In fact, when it comes to the new things that's going to happen, you don't know anything. It's all going to be brand new. And if you can do that and just take what you know and set it aside and take then you'll figure it out. You'll figure out what applies to you and what doesn't. And that applies to you, you'll move into it, and that will become your life. And that which doesn't, you move away from, and it'll become somebody else's life.
Yeah.
So that's the only suggestion I can have.
One of the things that made me move from linear to spiral was I was looking at the whole concept, resurrection, body change, rapture, wedding supper, millennial reign, white throne judgment, new earth. And I was looking at that and I thought, this gospel that I personally have is about the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's about what is going on in you right now. And none of that did a thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of intellect about it. Oh man, I could lay out the scriptures on it. I could do this, do that, and it was just a great teaching, of all those things. But I said to myself one day, I said, so what? So I ended up being a quote great dispensationalist. I ended up being a Clarence Larkin. I thought, so what? How does it affect me? And when I did that, I turned inside and I said, the resurrection takes place in me. The resurrection is not an event out here, but it is the person in here, on the inside. And that person catches something, realizes something for their day, for themselves, and it comes to life on the inside. And when it comes to life, what is it next thing it does to you? It changes your body, or you begin to walk a different way. You begin to think after the resurrection that happened to you. You begin to walk after the resurrection that happened to you. You begin to change your body, your thinking, your actions, your physical being. You change the places you go. You change the things you do. You change everything based on the resurrection. So you have a resurrection in here, or you come to an understanding that you're here for a purpose. And when you have that resurrection in here, you go into a body's change, or everything changes, and your complete atmosphere and everything about you changes. And that puts you into a rapture, or a moving from one glory to another. And as you move from one glory to another, we kind of put away foolish things that we used to do. Foolish things we used to believe, dogmas, doctrines, on and on and on. We put all those things away. Condemnation that we held on ourselves. We put all these foolish things away, and the way we look at how somebody lives, or how they walk, or how they act, and they can't be friends with us because they drink, or they smoke, or they cuss, and we had all these things about us, and inside me, I raptured beyond that. I put all those things away, and I said, I'm here to help others. I'm not here to condemn others. I'm here to help.
Mhm.
And it took me into a rapture, into a higher understanding than just a bunch of works, laws, and regulations. Well, when you do that, you begin to eat on something different.
Mhm.
You're eating on things like instead of rules and regulations, you're eating on fellowship one with another. You're listening to what Sister Aubrey or Sister Connie or Brother Daniel or whoever has to say, and you're eating on that, and you're making your body, you're making yourself a person that understands who you are, and it's opening up your vastness. So you're eating on, quote, the wedding supper, or you're eating on what you married to. You married to the resurrection.
Mhm.
You're married to the body change, and you're married to that glory of moving up, and you begin to eat on those things. Well, that takes you into a millennium. It takes you into a rest. After the wedding supper comes the rest. And so you have rest. You have understanding of who you are. You begin to rest. You're not worried about it. And that rest, now, with that in you, you begin to take a look at yourself and you begin to judge differently. At first, back in the old day, before my resurrection began to happen, I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I was condemned. I thought I was on my way to hell. I thought that heaven and hell were somewhere after I died here. I thought that, there's all kinds of thoughts you have that now you're sitting at the white throne judgment and you ain't judging nobody but yourself. Mm-hmm. Those sheep are you, and those goats are you. Mm-hmm. All of that is you, and you're judging yourself, and you're bringing yourself to a better person every day. I'm not trying to be better than Alan, and I'm not trying to be better than Joe Gomez, or I'm not trying to be better than anybody else out there. I'm working on myself. That's what the white throne judgment is about. This resurrection brings me to that point to where I say, now I am worthy. I am clean. I am pure. I am arrayed in white robes. I'm all of these things. I am a blessing to people. That's what I am. And you begin to make yourself and understand yourself to be worthy, and you pass through the white throne judgment out into new heaven and new earth. Mm-hmm. And that is regeneration. And you say to yourself, wow, finally, I got rid of all this condemnation. And you know what happens? A situation comes up. Boom. You come right back around the cycle again. Mm-hmm. Oh, I can't believe I did that. And then you know what has to happen to you? Because you let a little condemnation in there. You got to come through another resurrection. Mm-hmm. You got to overcome that thing. That's what the Lamb's Book of Life is about. It's an overcoming life. Mm-hmm. And you pass through the resurrection and the body change and the rapture, and you begin to eat again. You say, yeah, this feels good. And I conquered that. And I've overcome that. And you get out there to that new heaven and new earth, and you say, I'm not going to do that again. And boom, something else comes. Right. And you're constantly going through the spiral. And every time you go through that spiral of the resurrection cycle, all the way out to new heaven and new earth, you learn more. Mm-hmm. You learn something new. You become a greater person. You become a person that has overcome one more thing. And mm-hmm. you just continue to do that all of your life. And that helps me.
Yes.
That helps me to know I'm worthy. To know that it's what I was putting out here somewhere on a board for everybody to shout about. Mm-hmm. is in here, and it's living every day, and it's moving every day, and I'm moving through those cycles, and it's about me. I put out a little statement. I'm sure I'll hear a little bit about it, but I said I realized that I'm doing humanity a great service just by showing up, and so a lot of the people they'll say, well, that arrogant. It's not about arrogance at all. No. When you realize who you are, every room you walk into, you're doing them great service just by showing up, just by being there, by by putting in your 2 cents worth, which will, like Daniel said, it's got an energy attraction to it. You don't have to try to make them listen to you and force yourself on them. When you got that spiral going inside you, it's an energy attraction, and it pulls people to you. Is what it does. That's how the same way that we just went through the book of Revelation with the 6 cycles, that resurrection cycle, that's how I came to what I saw in the resurrection. And that's why we're where we're at today.
You went from a ministry of teaching people how to be individuals within a church body, within a ministry. You went from that to a message of you're an individual and it's all about you. It's not about the church body, it's about you individually. And an example, like you just talked about the pineal gland, the eye, and the twinkling of an eye. We always thought that was the eye of Brother Branham. The twinkling of an eye of a prophet. Yeah, it's yours. You took it from there and brought it to the individual.
Yeah.
You know, the lambs and the goats. You took it from the scripture of who's good, who's bad, who's going in rapture to who's not, and put it in the individual. It's you. You are the lamb and the goat. Straighten yourself out. So yeah, you went from a ministry to a message for individuals.
Amen.
And that individual message will spiral. You'll come back around to different things, and that's how you grow. You grow by going so far, and then something will happen, and you feel like you digressed a little bit, but then you grow from that. All that happened was a death. You came to a realization of something new, you died to it, and you spiraled on forward.
Yes.
So you brought that spiral message to the individual person and not to the church body or the individual in a group body. It's not about a body anymore. It's about each individual person.
Yeah. And thinking that way as an individual, let me put this in there. For myself, when I quit judging myself, when I quit judging anything, because when you judge something, that means there's legalism involved. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a judgment. There wouldn't be a settlement. There's legal. I quit judging anything. I don't have to anymore. Now I evaluate and analyze. What's useful, I take in. What's not useful, I push it away. I don't judge anything. Not a person, not a condition, not a sick. Judgment is not a part of me anymore. I don't, because to do that takes me back into legalism.
Yes.
And therefore what? We're bound. I'm not bound. I'm totally free to live my life I want, to let others live their life without any judgment, because what follows when there's a judgment? There's condemnation somewhere. There has to be. It follows right in line with it. Remove the judgment and just start evaluating and analyzing. Don't judge anything and watch the peace that comes in the way you look at people and you look at situations, how you can accept people for the way they are and the changes they're making and get along with them, even if they're totally opposite of you.
Yes.
So for me, I just set aside the judgment. I quit looking at that way. And I see the progression, the moving forward. Of course, I've always looked at nature to do that. I see the moon rise and fall. I see the sun. I see the constellations, the houses. And I kept thinking, how are we drawing things in a line? But every time we look at nature, it's in a circle. Something is not. And I realized it's not nature. We set it up circular, cyclical, because there's cycles to go through, and that's the way we just deceived ourselves in that it's like the people that used to say the earth is flat. Well, it's a linear line, just go down. No, it's not. It's circular, and therefore if it's moving, which energy never stops, it has to be moving in a circle. It's not moving in a straight line. It doesn't happen.
Science used to just draw an object. These pictures that they show from outer space, they are not, they're just virtual.
Yes.
They're not what's out there. I really believe that, they got the earth doing like this, coming around the sun and around the sun. I really believe the earth is doing this.
It is.
coming around the sun.
It is, yes.
And it's constantly doing that as it makes its roll around the sun. While it's doing the small spiral, it's also doing a big spiral around the sun. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a ball. It could be any kind of a shape that you want it to be. We have conceived things as a ball, and therefore we look at it that way, but someday we may look at it different.
It's funny you mention that because scientists have talked about this for years, that the Earth actually wobbles. It doesn't just spin you take a top and spin it.
Yeah.
When that top slows down to a certain point, you see that wobble. That's what the Earth actually does. It
Yeah.
actually wobbles.
So we have the individual, like they said about the sheep and the goats. Alan was talking about it, and I talked about it. That's all in you. And if you go to Matthew 25 and you pay attention to Jesus' teaching there, immediately after the white throne judgment, everybody says, well, after the white throne judgment, it's over. And we go out into utopia. We go out into world peace. And I didn't read that. What I read in Matthew 25 was when the white throne judgment was over, he gave talents unto the people. So after each one of us declare and understand ourselves as worthy, and we've taken the sheep and the goats, and we have become a holistic person, then we begin to recognize our talents. We didn't sit at a white throne somewhere and he handed you 2 talents and he handed you 1 and he handed you 5. We come to an understanding sitting here one day or wherever you were sitting, and it began to break to you who you are, and talents begin to open up in you as attributes. And those talents are everything from teachings to joy to peace to long suffering to meekness to kindness to goodness, faith, the way you work with people, the way you act around people, the types of people you love to be around. All of a sudden, with your newfound life, talents of that life begin to open up.
Yes.
And some people pay attention to those talents and gain more, while others are kind of afraid and they bury them and they say, I'll wait till the master comes back. And that's never a good thing. You've got to go through some things, the path that you took. You got to go through some things to get those in order. And that's what Jesus was trying to say. So we constantly, as soon as we think it's over, it's just begun. I come from resurrection to new heaven and new earth. Whoo! You just started. It's just begun. Bang, you're right back. You pass it again, and you pass it again, and you pass it again. And you do it hundreds of times. And you go through the 6 cycles of revelation that I was talking about. You go through the resurrection cycle. You're going through all of it all the time. All the time. Trumpets and thunders and vials. On and on and on. It's just moving in you constantly. You are a ball of energy. And you're wrapped up in frequencies. You're wrapped up in protons. You're wrapped up in everything. And it's a great movement. Now, I'm just going down through each one of them. Is there anything else anybody wants to say about that? How it helped you, how it made you understand better, moving it to the inside of us?
I know it helped me to remove, in a sense, the fear of. It gave me the courage to look outside of myself and my own traditional thinking to something new out there, something new, and tune into what's new and what's being said, and see how it applies to me, individual. I at work I type up a lot of letters, and I sit there and I pull us up on YouTube and just listen to different people talk, and I ran across quite a few people that are teaching things similar to what we're talking about, and very similar. And there's a lot of them out there. I never would have gave them a thought. not even a single thought in years before. But now because of what you've been teaching and how you've opened us up to individually learn what we need for ourselves, I tune into them and I think, wow, they're saying something that's really good here. And I'll send Donald a quote, or I'll send Daniel a quote, or a name of a person. So listen to this guy, he's got it. But it's an individual awakening of who you are and your purpose and your meaning in this life.
And each one of them, whoever it might be, they came up through a different path altogether.
Yeah, yes.
So even though you say to yourself, wow, she's saying the same things that I believe, listen closely, because she came a different path than you, and she's going to give you some things that you can use that you never thought of or realized.
Yeah.
Every one of us have a blind side, and when you recognize that, then you listen closer to what everyone around you is saying, trying to fill in that blind side,
Mm-hmm.
that area that you really don't know anything about. When I was in a corporation, we used to do what they called a 360 assessment,
Yes.
and you would send out so many assessments to your bosses above you, and to your peers with you, and to your subordinates under you. And they would all send in, and you'd be kind of shocked at the way some of these people felt about you. Some had real good things to say, and others it was a pretty rough situation. So that's kind of where we're at now. We're in that holistic person 360 mode, and the assessment from Old Testament to New Testament to Third Testament and out into a holistic person. I'm getting to the point I don't really like to call it love divine, because everybody's calling it that. So I call it a holistic person. We roll on out into a holistic person, and we do an assessment. Sometimes, there's a dead body. It wasn't very good. It wasn't a very good thing. But there's always, I'm telling you, wherever you find a stink, wherever you find a dead body in Christ, there's going to be a resurrection.
Yes.
So stop being so judgmental about it, and look for the resurrection instead of looking for the condemnation.
And it's in everyone all over the world. Aubrey brought up a good point about the different, what we so-called different religions around the
Yes.
world. Every one of them has a teaching that's similar or just like this. It's awakening up of who you are individually.
That's right.
Every one of them.
All religion has one thing in common that we don't have in common with our message, if you want to call it that. All religion teaches you what you shouldn't do to be worthy, to whereas we teach you what you should do, because you're already worthy. So based on all the religion, it's what you shouldn't do. And if you don't do these things, you're worthy. You fit right in.
Yeah.
It's opposite of what the reality is. It's not about what you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
It's about what you should do. You're worthy. The power is yours.
It's your point of view. When I went to the Grand Canyon, I stood there and I looked out across that south rim. I mean, just unbelievably gorgeous. When I first looked at it, I thought, wow, that's pretty. And I stood there for a few minutes just looking, and all of a sudden I began to realize there were huge, huge, huge canyons dropping back in it that I didn't even see. And they started coming to me. And then I thought, you know what? This is neat. And I took a step to the left.
Everything changes.
It's like a, what do you call those things? Those
Kaleidoscope.
kaleidoscope. Everything changed.
Kaleidoscope.
Every
Everything
color
changed.
changed. New canyons, new this, new that. Took another step this way. Then I sat down on a seat, and every move you made, it was just like, oh my God, look at that. And that's what this is, and what's going on. It's from your point of view. From my point of view, if I'm not careful, I say to myself, they just don't see what I see. They're not like me. They're looking. They're looking at the same Grand Canyon. They're looking at the same canyons, the same gulfs, the same everything. And they, in their mind, are seeing just as much beauty as you see. They're seeing just as great a things as you see in their minds. And their minds may be on a different frequency or a different level. But I like what Aubrey said here. She said, perhaps we could talk about how there really aren't the serious differences that people have in their minds about different religions, beliefs, cultures of people. Yes, we are all different, but not in the ways that most people think so.
See, I didn't know you had that written down there. I had no idea. When I brought that up, I didn't look at your notes.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And I mean, when she wrote it, I thought, that's it. And Kit even wrote back and said, put something in, he said, we may have different religions, different languages, different colored skin, but we all belong to one human race.
Yes.
And so I really like that. But is there anything you would want to kind of get on to a discussion about here, since you brought it up?
My peripheral. Yeah, I wasn't looking up there. It just, out of my peripheral, something kept changing, and I thought, there shouldn't be anything changing over there.
Okay.